Welcome to the Purpose to Create podcast with Natasha Wright, a business podcast for photographers and creativepreneurs who want to level up as they pursue their purpose to create. Lean in as we connect, inspire, and impact you as you build and grow your business.
I'm so hyped that you're here and listening to today's show. Today's guest is Michelle Murphy, a Florida small business attorney who loves working with creative entrepreneurs and content creators to protect your brand and content. In today's episode, we're chatting all about contracts and trademarks. Hey, Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Just hanging around the house.
Hanging around the house. Wow, I can imagine that it has been a crazy time with all things contracts and trademarks. And before we jump into all of that, I want to know a little bit more about you and your background and the types of entrepreneurs that you work with and things of that nature.
Sure. So like you said, I am from Florida. I'm a Florida-based attorney. I went to Nova Southeastern University for law school. Went to Florida State for undergrad, go Noles. And so prior to me opening my law firm, I was working with 9/11 victims to get their money because they were injured in 9/11. So we were working with a lot of cops, firemen, any residents that were in the area. So I was working on that. And then I'm going to keep it real with you. I pretty much got booted out of my job. And I decided that I wanted to start my own law firm. It was something that I had on my mind for years because I had a girlfriend that was already doing it. She was encouraging me to move forward with it. So I was just like, you know what? What better time than now? I might as well go for it. So prior to me starting trademark law, I was going to do a consumer law firm, something that I didn't really want to do, but it was something that I had experience in. So it's like, well, just do that because I know that. And then I woke up and I went to bed one night and I had a dream about like a YouTuber, a really popular YouTuber. She was having some legal issues and I was like, why don't you just go to your attorney? And she said, well, I don't think they have attorneys for people like us. And I was like, I woke up out of my sleep and I started Googling Google University.
Yeah, I'm an alumni of Google University, by the way.
So I started searching to see if there are attorneys for creatives. And there were people out there that were doing that. So I was like, I want to get in that lane. And so it kind of just went from there. So a month before I was opening my firm, I pivoted everything and I just went out as a trademark attorney and I enjoy it very much. I love the people that I work with. I work with a lot of small businesses, a lot of content creators, YouTubers, a lot of women in the beauty industry. That's kind of like, they're like my fave.
Well, we have tons of beauty industry folks who listen to the show, so I'm sure they're happy to hear this.
And so that's pretty much, but I've worked with accountants. I've worked with pretty much so many different people in the industry. Like they're all still working with creatives. So even the accountants that I work with, they're still either content creators or they work with creatives. So I kind of stay in that realm, even though I don't mean to stay in that realm.
Right.
I think we all just kind of resonate with each other because we still all have those same type of clients. We know what each other is going through. So I love it. It's so good to be able to work with people that truly care about their business. Because when you come to me, like I know that you're really taking stuff seriously. So
wow, like just listening to you just now, I've learned so much in a short amount of time because I really didn't realize that YouTubers and content creators and, you know, people in the beauty industry, they needed to have an attorney. I knew they need to have contracts and things like that, but not so much an attorney. Could you share a little bit about why content creators need an attorney?
So A lot of the ones that I've worked with, they work with brands. So they need contracts with those brands. They need someone to make sure that the brands aren't, quote unquote, screwing them over.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times these bigger companies try to take advantage of creators because most creators have no idea when it comes to the business side of things. They just like to create stuff. And so they're just signing on the dotted line because they're like, oh, well, Mac wants to work with me or Tarte wants to work with me. So I want to work with them, but I'm just going to give away all my rights while I'm in the process. And
Right.
you have so many, like, you're the one that's creating all this content for these people. They need you just like you need them. So I think there needs to be some equitable, that your contracts need to be equitable when you're working with, brands or anybody,
Right. And so is that also includes like things like licensing images and things of that nature?
Yep. The actual written content, your images, all that. So,
Oh,
and a
wow.
lot of times, content creators are just giving this away. So they're signing away their content. And I'm like, no, you should be, number one, they should be paying you for your content, and you should be able to tell them how to use that content. So.
Wow. Okay. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. I'm really interested in this conversation because, as photographers who listen to this show, we sometimes identify with creating content for our clients. And I know for myself, being a branding photographer, I am constantly creating content for my clients, for personal brands. And, I have some clients who work with other brands. And so I had never really thought about, if I needed to have a contract in place outside of just my normal, standard go-to contract that protects, licensing of images, reusing them, and making sure, because people still get paid after they pay me. They're still going to get paid using these images, but I don't get anything back from that. And I think that is a mistake that a lot of photographers who are content creators make, is that I don't think about that. And I'm pretty sure my counterparts really don't think about that part either.
Right. And so another big thing, and I tell this to any photographer, so wedding photographers, brand photographers, family, the family photo photographers, all of these people, in your contract, you want to make sure that you are able to use these images for marketing materials. If that person does not want you to use their image for your marketing materials, charge them more. Because at the end of the day, that's still a bargain. Like, there still needs to be, you still want to be able to use your work so that you can get more clients. Like, that's the point.
Right. And if you're not able to use your images for marketing purposes, you won't get exposure to more clients, which is probably how that particular client found you, because you showed someone else's images. So if they stop you from using their images, then the next person won't be able to find you.
Exactly.
So when you say charge more, would it be like charge more in the package price, or is it okay to charge an additional percentage? Because I know that I charge an additional 25% of the package cost if you don't want me to use the images for marketing purposes.
Yep. Absolutely. A percent. I mean, it could be a flat fee or a percentage. I mean, it's just whatever works with you.
Just whatever your preference is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. And is there any like certain type of language, or do you have any resources that can help us understand that more? Or how much are you able to share about how to go about doing that and including that in a contract, verbiage we should be using, and things of that nature? So
I do have some verbiage that I use for all of my photographers, or all of my photography contracts and videography contracts. Anybody in the wedding industry, event planners too. I just have this, it's like a paragraph that I use. And I can possibly, do you have like a resource page that's going to go with the?
Yeah, I do.
I can just give you that and then you can put it on the resource page or whatever.
Okay, awesome. I'll do that, and I'll make sure that I get it out to the audience. At the end of the season, there will be kind of like a podcast guide of all of the resources that all of the speakers have provided, and I'll make sure to include that clause as well, so people will have it. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think that is really important for people to, because again, like, people just don't know that you can do that, right? So I appreciate that. So when it comes to content creators, I think there are like two buckets, right? There are photographers who create for content creators, and then there are content creators who create content, right? Are there, when a photographer works with a content creator to, like a influencer, for example,
right?
If we are working with influencers, do photographers need to have, I know that what I'm trying to say is, I know that content creator influencers have their own agreements with brands that they work with.
Right.
So for photographers, should we have our own contracts, or do we give them language to include in the agreements that they have?
So that is actually a question that I never really thought of, because like you said, more content creators are hiring, brand photographers for these shoots for the actual company. You should obviously you should have your standard contract between you and the influencer.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the best thing for you to do at that point is going to be, I'll say the easiest thing to do is to, once you take the pictures and the, influencer uses them, that's kind of just when you sever all ties. You're obviously going to want to retain those images. And like you said, you're going to have something in your contract that says you can use these images for, but then it's up to the influencer to relay that message to the brand.
Right, exactly. Because it's almost like the photographer's agreement is really not with the brand so much, but the photographer's agreement is with the influencer, and maybe the licensing rates don't apply to the brand, but they apply to the influencer who's using the images. So then that way, whatever arrangement that they have with the brand, the photographer is already compensated for that, and then the influencer can then just kind of figure that out with the brand. So it's kind of like the photographer, the relationship with the photographer and the content creator has nothing to do with the relationship with the brand, even though you're shooting the content for the brand.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that correctly, because I know that a lot of photographers are now pivoting to doing more product photography.
Yep.
Which is why I wanted to ask that question, because if we're but doing a micro pivot to do brand photography, before we get into, hey, how should we price things? What type of contract should we really have in place? So I was just curious.
Yeah. No, I think personally, before you even start the LLC, the corporation, all that stuff, you need to have a contract first and foremost, because obviously if you're not making money, then the LLC and the corporation are kind of moot.
Yeah.
That contract is how you're going to be making your money in the beginning. And then from there, you can, as you expand and grow, you put those other pieces in place. But yeah, the contract first, and then think about everything else after. And also, it depends on the business, and how much liability, you're going to be facing. Obviously, if you're a doctor opening up your own practice, you want to, put your business entities in place. But with more, with the more service-based creatives, what matters most is going to be that contract first. And then from there, as you grow and you expand, then you can put all the other pieces in place. And also, what I was going to say, remember to look for your trademark like if you have this business name that you love, make sure that it's not already registered as a trademark, because then you're going to have to go back and reverse engineer, rebrand, all that stuff. And that's just not something most people want to deal with if they don't have to.
Okay. All right. Oh, I have so many questions. Let's break this down. First, I want to go back to the contracts piece about having the contract in place first. For someone who is new and starting out, and even someone who's established and need to refresh their contracts, what kind of contract should we have? Because I get a lot of questions about, hey, do you know of any good templates that I can use to get started? Do you know of an attorney that I can work with so I can figure out what I need to go into it? So what are some things, like if we're just starting out, is the template route the best way to go? Or should we really be reaching out to an attorney to say, hey, I don't know where to start. What should I have in my contract?
If you truly don't know where to start, I would honestly reach out to an attorney. But the templates, myself, and my other colleagues, like in the attorney world, we all have contract templates that we've created. So, for people that really cannot afford an attorney right now, at least it has the major things that need to be covered in them, because we've all been working with these type of, with people in different types of industries. So we know what to look for. And so we are including all that we've learned into our contracts.
Okay. All right. That's really good to know. And then what are some common myths that you hear from content creators and creatives, people in wedding industry, some common myths that people feel like they shouldn't have in their contract that they really should have in their contract?
I wouldn't say that there is anything with what should be in there and what shouldn't be. One thing that I've heard, and I hear it a lot because I'm always trolling Facebook groups, right, is like contracts don't do anything, because if you go to court and you can't defend it, then it's pointless. Well, the contract is there so you don't go to court, so you don't have to get to court. That's that line of protection that you're facing, so that you don't have to go to court. On top of that, why would you ever enter into something where, you're making $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 and there's no protection at all? That is not something that you want to get yourself into. And I see it all the time with people, especially like website, graphic designers and website designers. A lot of the times, I see it on the flip side where I hire a website designer and then the website designer doesn't do their job. First thing I ask, well, what does the contract say? Well, we didn't have a contract. Well, what can you really do at that point besides, you can try to do a chargeback maybe on your credit card, but it starts to get very dicey when you don't have that contract, because now you have to figure out what to do.
Right, exactly. And so in those cases where someone doesn't have a contract in place and then they try to, seek out legal action, for the creative who doesn't have a contract and they're facing something from a client, do they still have to, even though they don't have it in writing, they would still have to kind of pay their client back, right?
So sometimes in writing is just an email.
Okay.
You just need evidence.
That's why it's important that creatives have one form of communication with clients, not a text, not a DM, not a Facebook message, but email.
And no cash apping. Stop doing that.
You heard it here. Stop cash apping. You're not protecting yourself from cash apping. We know what you're doing, but stop. You're hurting yourself in the long run.
And I do know Cash App does have like a business side to things, but I just don't like Cash App. I have something against it, so.
Yeah. You can't, at least with PayPal, you can protect yourself a little bit. You can fight that, because if you have email traffic going back and forth with the client, this is why I tell my coaching clients, my coaching students, and people in my Facebook groups, like, you have to have it in writing. Like, find one form of communication, email. Yep. Because if you ever have to go to PayPal or your credit card company or whoever, you can send them that email trail.
Yep, exactly. I highly suggest either email, if you do Slack, even Voxer. You know, you're going back and forth with your clients. Just have something out there that is recording everything that's happening during the transaction.
Right, exactly. Okay, and then once they realize, hey, wait, I need a contract in place. I need that ASAP. And then from there, in that contract, do clients try to find like loopholes in contracts, like for creatives? Because I've heard some really bad horror stories from creatives who have had contracts and their clients have still taken them to court, and it just was not a good situation.
So obviously that's, if someone's taking you to court, they're going to try to find the loophole. That's the point. But if you have what you need in there, then a lot of times it's kind of hard to find that loophole. So contracts are pretty straightforward. I mean, it truly is. You said you're going to do this for this amount of money, and then that's the performance part. Like, you're going to do this. I give you the money to do this, and that's it. That's truly how simple a contract is. Obviously, things can get dicey, like things like this pandemic, you know, things that we've never thought would happen. But your contract, there's still defenses that you can make when it comes to that, you know, the pandemic and that type of thing. But that's why you just have to make sure you're communicating at all times. I think that is something that a lot of people don't realize that they need to do and should be doing. Like, threatening someone with a lawsuit should not be the first that should not be the first action when someone wrongs you. First, you're going to try to communicate and resolve it. And then after that, you're going to, you know, maybe send a demand letter. And then you start the ball rolling for the lawsuits. But just emailing somebody or calling them, picking up a phone and communicating can help tremendously and never get to the court stage. So
Right. So it's, you know, a lot of times we tend to avoid the situation when in fact we really need to address the situation head on, so we could avoid having to go to court or refunds and things of that nature.
And can I add one thing? Because this is a situation that happened to me actually earlier this week. So I think everybody, especially business owners, we need to be able to handle criticism and feedback. I think a lot of the times we think that because we're doing something that it's the best, but you can always improve. There's always room for improvement. And I don't think that you should take any type of criticism to heart. You just make it better so that the next person doesn't have that criticism for you.
Right. No, that's fair. And so one of the things we lightly touched on that I do want to talk a little bit about, considering the times that we are in with the pandemic, let's talk about contracts in the midst of a crisis, right? Because, you know, this may not be the only crisis we ever experience as creative entrepreneurs. So beyond COVID, just contracts and crisis, how should we prepare ourselves to really have solid contracts in place so that a prime example, I've been seeing a lot of cancellations, people having to refund like large amounts, and this is their livelihood, rescheduling on dates that photographers or wedding industry professionals, planners, beauty, hairstylists, makeup artists, things of that nature are not available on. And, you know, how do we protect ourselves in the future for that loss of income?
So the big thing, and I'm sure you've heard it if you're here, you know, listening to contract attorneys out there, the biggest thing that we can do is make sure that you have a rescheduling clause. You're going to have your termination clause or a cancellation clause. And you're going to have a force majeure clause. And it's FORCE, majeure spelled MAJEURE. And the force majeure clause, which is being talked about so much right now because there's never been anything like this. So we don't really have much case law to go on with this situation. But the force majeure clause is basically saying that the contract's not breached just because I didn't perform what I said I was going to perform in the contract. I couldn't perform because there's outside forces that were not in my control that stopped me from performing the service or whatever. So you want to have that clause in there. Most force majeure clauses did not have anything about pandemics in there. So what's going on in the attorney world is, well, is this considered an act of God? Where can we fit this in? So we're going to see a lot of that in the coming months when cases start going to court. So I can't tell you what's going to be the outcome, but there are, even if you don't have a force majeure clause and say you do have to go to court, there are some affirmative defenses that you can raise, and that's impossibility, impracticability, impracticability, and frustration of purpose. So those are all things that you can raise, even if you do find yourself in a court about this whole situation. And one thing, because I was in a continuing legal education course yesterday about this, because I want to know, I need to be up to date. And so one thing that we were discussing was, what was it? Ooh, it slipped my mind now. But there is something else. If you have insurance, so if you have business interruption insurance, we were discussing how this may not cover that. Usually business interruption insurance is for more like physical damage and not this type of damage. And a lot of these business interruption contracts have a virus and bacteria exclusion. So if you have an insurance policy, just make sure you're looking through there and seeing what's in there, because that's another thing that's going to be coming up a lot.
Wow, I never really thought about that when it comes to insurance, that I need to read it more closely, because I didn't realize that some insurances have virus and bacteria exclusions.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Note to self, definitely look into my insurance policy to make sure that it covers those things. And I'm sure that a lot of insurance companies and, like you said, attorneys will have to revisit some of the language that's used in some of these contracts and agreements to see whether or not, like, what categorizes, an act of God and what doesn't, or, pandemic and viruses and things of that nature. So thank you for highlighting that. I think that was something I definitely did not know.
And at the end of the day, even if you go to court is so that it's equitable. So don't be nasty. Like if you're the one that's the person in power, don't be nasty to the person that, is making their livelihood off this, because the court is going to look at all communications. Once again, they're going to see, they want to know if this person in power was, abusing their power.
Right. So. Right. Okay. So this is so good. I want to talk a little bit about trademarks for a little bit. Okay. We lightly touched on it, but I want to dig a little bit deeper. For trademarks, when should we be getting trademarks? Because I feel like it's kind of like whenever I come up with a cool name for something, whether it's a course or a workshop or my name or whatever, I want to reach out and figure out, let me get this trademark. But talk us through what a trademark is, when we should be getting trademarks, and all the things about trademarks.
So a trademark is basically a source identifier. So that means that you went out to buy a product because you knew you're going to get a certain quality of that product, and that's just the product that you know, and that's what you want. When you should register your trademark, honestly, that wholly depends on the person. So I always tell my clients, if you love a name and you cannot go a day without using it, or you can never see a brand, you don't ever want to rebrand, you can register your trademark before you even start business.
Okay.
It's called an intent to use application, and you just hold your spot for that trademark.
Okay.
If you if you're a little bit more flexible, you don't mind changing names, or you can come up with something different, then I would say you can hold off until you know that name is going to stick, because there's no point in wasting money on a trademark and then you're not going to use it in the end anyway.
Right.
Oh, that's how I tell my clients to file, whether or not they should file when that question comes up.
Okay. And should you get trademarks for things like course titles, workshop titles, things like that? all of that.
Yes, I definitely agree. B School, that's a trademark. She registered the trademark for that course. And we all know it's huge. We get the emails every year with all the affiliates clogging up our inbox about B School.
Right.
So if you have a course or a workshop that is like national, then yes, you absolutely want to register the trademark for it. So.
Okay. No, that's cool. I want to share my experience with trademark because it's going to be important. So last year when I started this podcast, I was going to start it a completely different name. And I was like, okay, let me go figure out trademark. So put in the trademark for it. And then maybe, I don't know, a few months later found out that someone else was using a similar name. And I had to change my name to what it is today.
Right.
What I did not know about the process is, the process for getting a trademark is a long one. It took me about a year to get my trademark. You definitely have to have you already have to be using that name, which I did not know. I thought that, hey, I want to use this name and give it to my attorney and say, hey, let's trademark this. And it's like, wait a minute, slow down. You got to know what categories it's going to go in. You got to know if it's going to be multiple categories or one. You got to think about future use. Right. Also, do you have an Instagram or website presence, social media presence? All of those things had to be in place before I can even file my trademark.
Yep. So with the intent to use application, which is the one that holds your spot, you don't need any of that, but you do have to start selling sometime. I get so many questions. I want to trademark this word. Well, what are we doing with it? You can't just trademark a word and not sell anything, not blog, not do whatever you do. You can't just hold words. That's not how trademark law works. You have to be selling something in connection with that trademark. And selling doesn't have to be like physical money, money exchange. It can be like YouTubers. Technically YouTube isn't a monetary, obviously you'll monetize in the future, but even before you're monetized, you can still register the trademark for it. Nonprofit organization, same thing. So selling putting your stuff out in the marketplace just means that it's out there for someone to consume it. So.
Okay. No, this is really helpful. Because when I went to go file my trademark, I didn't even know any of this. I didn't know that. I was like, I don't want nobody else to use it. But like you said, an intent to use, like, how are you going to intend to use it? You have to show that you are going to use this for something. It can't just sit on it. So no, This is very helpful. This is very helpful. Before we close, are there any last tips that you can leave with the audience about contracts and trademarks, things that we should know that most people don't think about?
I would say make sure you're looking at your contract either on like a half yearly basis or a yearly basis, just going over, because so many things change and you don't even realize it until, that year passes by and somebody doesn't do something, but you think, I've already changed, like we've already changed that, but your contract didn't say that you've changed it. And I mean, it happens to me a lot in my fee agreements. I'll change something in like my back end, but my contract will say something different. And I'm like, oh no, like I have to make sure that these are matching. Same with your terms and conditions on your website. If your terms and conditions on your website say that you take refunds, but then your contract says you don't take refunds, that doesn't match. And when that chargeback happens, they're going to take the other person's side because you said you take refunds. or you issue refunds. So that's something that a lot of people do not think about, that their terms and conditions need to match their actual service contract or whatever type of contract that you have. The other thing, as far as trademarks, make sure that you're doing a quick search. You can do it on the trademark website, and it's going to bring up any trademark that is even remotely related to your trademark. So that's very important to do before even starting that. Even before like buying the domain name, just make sure that you have the name actually exists for you to use, and it's not registered. Because if you try to register a trademark and the person is a registered trademark owner is monitoring their trademark, they're going to send you a cease and desist letter. And sometimes those cease and desist letters come with a demand for money. So you don't want to be in that situation. Okay.
That's really good to know that that's out there, that you can kind of check and see if it exists before you start spending all this money on trying to. I am personally a domain hoarder. And what I mean by that is I may think of a name or for something. I'm like, oh, let me buy the domain for that. GoDaddy says the domain is available. I'm more than likely going to get it. But no, that makes perfect sense. Before you spend money on these domains, see if it's a trademark available for it, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to need to get a trademark.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool beans. Exactly. Oh, I love this conversation.
I think that's really, I mean, there's so much we can go into, but this is the most important, like that surface level, just consuming this type of content, you're taking a step in the right direction. Because a lot of people are just like beer goggles. Like if I don't see it, then it's not happening and I don't have to worry about it. But that's usually when you're too late, coming to me when something has happened. So you don't want to be in that situation. You want to be proactive, not reactive.
Right, exactly. And stop working with people without contracts. I hear all the time, oh, I'm working with somebody, but I don't have no contract. Why?
I made my sister sign a contract. So if I'm making my own family member sign a contract, you need to make everybody sign a contract. Right.
Friend or not, like friend, family, whatever, everybody needs to sign a contract. It's the CYA.
Right.
You have to CYA. This is how you teach people to treat you as a business owner, not a hookup. Yep. Not a hookup. This is not no hookup. Yeah, I'm just getting started, but you're going to follow my, this is my contract. I need you to treat me as a business.
Exactly. And I think a lot of times, especially as Black business owners, a lot of us are like first generation, and we try to be flexible. We try to be, cool about it. But at the end of the day, it's still, this is how I make my money. So
right.
It needs to be protected.
God. I just remembered what I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Oh my God, I'm so glad I remembered. I hear a lot from photographers and creatives in general too. When, we have our own contracts in place, but then when we work with a client, they want to add and change and remove things from our contracts.
Uh-huh.
I'm so glad I remembered that, because I think this is somebody who needs to hear this. How does that happen where clients feel like they can come and change an entrepreneur's contract to fit what they want because they don't like what we have in our contract? Like, I don't understand that. Help me to understand, what is the proper etiquette for allowing that to happen? First, I know you should not allow it to happen, but why? I don't understand. Help me understand.
Okay. So everyone has the right to negotiate their contract. They really do. The thing is, you want to make sure if there are some just like non-negotiables, then just don't work with that person, because it's going to be a headache at the end of the day. Because if they're putting something in their and you're taking something out of your contract, that means they're probably going to do it. And it's something that's just non-negotiable for you. But if maybe, things like payment plans can be negotiated, stuff like that. But when it comes to client expectations, which everyone should have client expectations and responsibilities in their contract, that's one thing that I recommend for everybody, because this contract is telling your client how they need to behave to work with you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if they're trying to revise things in that area, no. We can revise things in the money area, see, if we can come to some type of agreement. But if there's certain non-negotiables that you're just like, I'm not changing this, then I think everyone should just walk away from the contract or the business or whatever it is, and you work on your own thing, because there's probably going to be that headache client that you don't want to deal with in the first place.
That was good right there. That was real good, because I hear all the time, oh, my client wanted to change this. What do you think? I mean, payment plans and stuff like that, I'll change. But when it comes to the meat of the contract that covers you, you should not change it, whether they are someone who understands contracts, a lawyer, what have you. Just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean that you have the right to come and change your vendor's contracts to suit your needs. Right.
And of course, you should always, before you even make any changes to any contract, communicate first. Get on the phone or send an email like, hey, do you think we could change this and this and this? I would rather someone do that to me than redline my contract and scratch things out. Like, no, because that's just offensive. Personally, that's offensive to me. Unless it's like lawyer to lawyer. It's a little bit different. Right. But when it's like a client in a service business, no, you don't do that.
Yeah. Ain't nobody got time for that. So I so enjoyed this conversation and loved having you on the show. Can you tell the people how we can stay connected to you after?
Sure. So I am heavily on Instagram. You can find me. It's the Trademark Attorney with the, was it underscore? That's it. That's it right there. That's it. And then I'm heavily on TikTok. I love TikTok. Okay.
Are you serious?
So fun on there. So I'm the Trademark Attorney, no underscore, just the Trademark Attorney on TikTok. And it is a ball over there.
Are you serious?
I'm so serious.
Oh my God. Okay. So real quick on Instagram, the Trademark Attorney _.
Yeah.
Okay. And on TikTok, just the Trademark Attorney.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did not know this side of you. TikTok is so much fun. Wait, what do you do on TikTok? Are you just having a ball?
So I do incorporate my business, but I use it with like the trendy music, on there. You know what I mean? I couldn't get on the ground floor on Instagram or YouTube, but TikTok, I'm on the ground floor. So I'm going all in over there.
That totally makes sense though, because you are an attorney for content creators. And so it's important for you to be up to date on these platforms, because there's a lot of TikTok people who are like blowing up and they need an attorney.
Yeah.
And they're going to want that cool attorney that I see what you're doing there. I see you positioning yourself. Thanks again for being on the show. I look forward to sharing the resources with the audience and talking to you again soon. So thanks again for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Purpose to Create podcast. Share, like, comment, or review this episode. Check out the show notes at www.purposetocreatepodcast.com and connect with us online at Purpose to Create.